Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner, and it is my privilege to share with you a panel I recorded for Comic Con at Home 2021, San Diego Comic Con at Home 2021, a few weeks ago with my great friend and author Max Allan Collins about several of Max's Titan projects, his Nolan hard case crime series, his Mike Hammer novel series by Mickey Spillane and Max Allan Collins, and his graphic novel series, Mystery, the Mystery Archives that Titan Comics are about to publish the third edition of. So here's Max Allan Collins talking about his epic career at San Diego Comic-Con at Home 2021. Many thanks to Justin Duter and the team at San Diego Comic-Con 2021 for letting us share this with you. Enjoy. Welcome to San Diego Comic-Con 2021, and welcome to the Titan Comics, Titan Books, Max Allan Collins panel. My name is Andrew Sumner from Titan Entertainment, and I want to introduce my good friend, the three biggest names in noir fiction, Max Allan Collins. How are you, mate?
I'm fine. It's always great to be with you, Andrew. I really, when you say we're friends, it's not a show business thing. We're actually friends.
This is very true, and it's always great to hang out with you, mate. Always great to chat with you. And the great thing about this panel is that we have a ton of things to chat about.
Oh, yeah.
This is a very Max Collins rich year, as will next year be, for Titan in all its forms, whether that's Titan Comics or it's Titan Books, whether it's our hard case crime imprint, wonderfully edited and run by Charles Ardai. You've got projects for all of those things coming out, mate.
I do.
So there's so much, there's such a Mount Everest of noir fiction for us to talk about. I think we'll set base camp with our Titan Comics project, Mystery. Now, one of the things that we've been doing at Titan Comics is collecting Max's classic mystery comic strip from a wide variety of sources from 20 years of publishing. And volume one was called One Mean Mother. That's Max's strip co-created with Terry Beattie. Then volume two was Skeleton in the Closet. And now volume three will be publishing in September 2021 this year. And that will be called The Cold Dish. So what can you tell us about the Mystery Archive, Max, and what you're going to be showing us in The Cold Dish?
Well, we began the first two volumes that are out right now, collect what we did for DC Comics, which it was a series of basically graphic novellas around 50, about 50 some pages. And it's a very good representation of what we did. And also those people that are DC completists need to get those first two volumes. Then I think we'll have them on board for the one that's coming up, the third one, The Cold Dish, where we go back to the beginning, where it was it was serialized in a magazine called Eclipse.
An Eclipse magazine.
In the very early 80s, around 1981. And that's an interesting story in itself because we were invited to be part of Eclipse magazine by Dean Mullaney, and pretty much everybody else in that magazine was a superstar. And Terry and I were obviously not. I mean, Terry had done very little at that point, and I was known primarily because I was doing the Dick Tracy comic strip.
Yeah.
But I hadn't really done any comic books. And so we were asked to come aboard to do a serial, and we had 8 pages to deal with. And interesting, and not to put anybody else down in it, because these are some incredible people. People like, Trina Robbins and Steve Ditko, I mean, legends. But we really received a lot of attention. It was kind of the hit of Eclipse Monthly, I believe it was originally called. And it was an 8-ish, I think an 6 or 8 issue run. At any rate, that serial is collected in the Cold Dish. And we were spun off into a comic book of our own at Eclipse. And it ran, I think, 10 issues, and it was a color comic book. And that's all gathered in the Cold Dish. Then we did bounce from publisher to publisher. We did something, we were with Dave Sim at Aardvark Vanaheim for a while, and then
Yeah.
Renegade Press, which was Denny Lubert, and then ultimately we got invited to go to DC. So we kind of started at the end because I thought for Titan, I wanted to really put our best foot forward out and have be very user friendly to people. And I think those are two lovely volumes.
Yeah.
And I think Terry is a unique artist because he brings a lot of the sort of the EC influence of Johnny Craig and also the comic strip world. I mean, we're very influenced by, and we're extremely influenced at the time by comic strips. We felt that in the late 70s, early 80s, comics had gotten so design oriented that they could become incoherent. And so we stated that we were going to do an experiment in coherence.
Yeah.
And some people, we got knocked for that, for being too simplistic at times, but excuse me for you being able to follow the story.
I, as you know, I've got a tremendous fondness for mystery, and I didn't tell you this, mate, because we were just talking off camera about the fact that I've just really downsized my mum and dad, and part of me downsizing my elderly parents in the northwest of England is that they moved from their very large home to another one, and as a result of that, I had to figure out what to do with all my old comic books.
Oh, sure.
When I was going through them, I found all my Eclipse magazines, and I found Eclipse 1 and 2 with those very first mystery stories. In fact, I took a picture of them. I meant to email them to you, and I got so, you know what it's like, I got so busy. I've still got the photos. I got so busy with everything else. They're up in the attic. I forgot to send them to you, but yeah, man, it was such a gut punch, and it made me realize when I was flicking through the story again how much I actually love that first mystery in her nascent form, if you will, and which ties in very closely to Mike Hammer mythology, of course.
It certainly does, because the premise was that a character like Velda, the secretary of Mike Hammer, long unrequited love, and they finally get married. And in Miss Tree, when Miss Tree marries Mike Tree, the Mike Hammer substitute, he gets murdered on their honeymoon. And so she takes over the agency, and that is her first case to solve her famous husband's death. But we were really swimming against the tide.
Yeah.
Because crime comics just were not around.
Yeah.
I mean, Detective Comics may have been called Detective Comics, but it wasn't.
But it wasn't
about
a detective book. Yeah.
Yeah, and so God bless Dean Mullaney for allowing us to experiment a little bit, and I really am proud of what we spurred, because really all of the crime comics that have come since are built on our shoulders, quite frankly.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true, and I think everybody recognizes that, and that's why if you're listening to this panel and appreciating this opening conversation, you've really got to pre-order Mystery Archive Collection number 3, The Cold Dish, which is out from Titan Comics in September this year. It's an epic collection. The two that are out there are an amazingly good read as well, collecting the Mystery Quarterly work from DC. That's great stuff. And then you can go back to the beginning with The Cold Dish and have a real good time with it.
Well, see, what they can do if they're comic book fans, and they've got to start at the beginning, then they start with volume 3, and they go all the way through the next, because there's going to be several more volumes.
Yeah.
Printing. It's an archive approach. And when you get to the end, then you can go back and read volume 1 and 2, and you can put them on the shelf in any order you want to. We're not supervising this. You get to do what you want to with these.
Go crazy with it. Put them on water. The important thing is that you buy them, though. Buy the books and put them on yourself. That is the key.
They're really beautifully put together. Titan's done a great job on these, and I do an introduction. There's a lot of back matter. There are some of the prose short stories that we've done about Ms. Tree, cover galleries. I mean, this is really an archive approach that I always dreamed would be done for Ms. Tree.
Yeah, and that's the great team at Titan Comics, run by Ricky Clayton and John Jawitkowski. They're doing a great job over there, and it's a beautiful series. And I'm sure anybody who's tuned in to watch this is going to really enjoy it. And so that's The Cold Dish coming soon. Now, this panel is mainly about three things. Mainly about three things: Mystery, Mike Hammer, and Nolan. But we're going to take a quick detour to talk about one of Max's other great series characters, Quarry, because there is a new Quarry novel coming out from Hard Case Crime in November. Is there not, Max?
Yes, it's called Quarry's Blood, and what's interesting about it is it's a coda to the series. I had actually written a book called The Last Quarry that was intended to be the last book, and in fact, if I can tell this story quickly, when Charles Ardai, the editor, was putting Hard Case Crime together, one of the first things he did was approach me about doing reprints of a reprint of one of the Nolan books, a different series. And we did that. We did a thing called Two for the Money, which is coming back out in a new edition.
Yeah.
That was the first two books in the Nolan series. Nolan is a professional thief. And that was his enthusiasm. Charles's enthusiasm was Nolan. And I said, well, the other series, the one that I get the most mail on, is Quarry, which I had done 5 books in it, 4 books in the mid 70s and 1 in the early 80s, and hadn't done anything since. This is now around 2005, I would guess. And so I said, I'd really like to finish that series. I have an idea for what I want to do for the last Quarry story. So he was enthusiastic about that, and we did The Last Quarry. Then it got really good reviews, and everybody really liked it. So we were standing in actually a buffet line at the Private Eye Writers of America Seamus Awards, and Charles was in front of me, as all editors are, of course, and he turned and looked at me and said, boy, it's too bad that was the last Quarry. It'd be nice if we could do another Quarry. I don't know how we do it. And I said, how about the first Quarry? So I then, and he bought it from me in line at this in this buffet line. That was my pitch. How about the first Quarry? So I backed up and did a series, which is still really ongoing, of the adventures that I didn't get to write before because some publisher in the mid 70s dropped me. Yeah. So I got to go back and fill in all of these stories about him and do what I had wanted to do all along. And so, but in my mind, The Last Quarry was still going to be the last book.
Yeah.
And then I think it was Charles who had this idea, and I'm not going to say exactly what it was, but it had to do, it was an idea so irresistible that I could only do it as a follow-up to The Last Quarry. It couldn't be inserted. It needed to be, okay, one more. And so it became, as I say, a coda. And frankly, I know we're going to talk about Nolan, but the book Skim Deep was also designed as a coda to a series that I considered to be done. So I think one of the things that I like to do that may be a little unusual, at least it was unusual in my day, was that these series books have a certain continuity, even though they may appear out of continuity, they may appear out of order, but that when I'm at the end of the day, Nathan Heller, Quarry, Nolan, these basically are sagas. They can be viewed as one big story, and that's not true of, say, Nero Wolfe or.
No, I would I tell you what I would analogize that approach to, doing a saga of somebody's life. It's absolutely what you're doing on Mickey Splain's Mike Hammer, and we'll talk about Hammer later. But outside of yourself, that's a technique that's worked very well from writers as diverse as C.S. Forrester with Horatio Hornblower. That's exactly what he did. My dad is still a great Hornblower fan, and he portrayed his life, started in the middle, then he worked forward and he worked backwards, right? And similarly, it's the same with Michael Moorcock with Elric, exactly the same thing. He's done that mosaic of Elric's life, not starting at the beginning. And this is what you're doing. I think it's such I like to see a portrait of somebody's life take shape. You know, I don't mind the immortal hero concept of they never really change, you know, and they're the same every issue.
Sure.
You know, they don't age and whatnot. But I think what you're doing is much more interesting.
Well, with Quarry, it became a situation of allowing me to actually, in a small way, talk about COVID-19.
Yeah.
Because I gave him a happy ending at the end of the last Quarry, and this isn't much of a spoiler. When we meet him in Quarry's Blood, his wife has died of COVID.
Yeah.
And they've had 10 happy years. He's had his happy ending, and now he's adrift, as many people who lose a spouse are when they're older. And Quarry in this book, and this was fairly bold, he's probably 70, 71, 72 years old. That's not your typical action hero. And I had to write him, of course it's easy since that's, I'm about the same age.
Yeah.
So I could, Quarry's always been, to some degree, all these people that I write about, they're autobiographical. That's really all writers ever do, is write about themselves in the skin of these imaginary folks. But they're sometimes very directly autobiographical in my work. And so and my wife's fine, by the way. She did not die of COVID, but that was
and hello to her as well. She's Bob's
Barb,
in great shape.
Yeah, she's wonderful. But what was interesting about putting the book together, when you come to this book, which is not out till, it's in November, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, November 2021. When
the book starts, the beginning of the book, about the first third of the book, is one of the flashback stories, a story that takes place in the early 80s. And so as you read that, you may think you're reading one of those, and then we get to the end of that, and it's a self-contained thing. And then we come back, and what really happens with Quarry is, to boil it down, is, somebody's trying to kill him, and he has to figure out which of the past stories that you've read, if you've been reading the series, had a loose end that came back to bite him. So we revisit in Quarry's Blood, we revisit about 3 or 4 of the past stories, but 15 to 20 years later in the context of the series. And it was unlike anything I'd ever written. And I don't know if I've ever read any series that did this, where you go back and revisit the other books and see, okay, here's the love interest from this book. Now she's 30 years older.
Yeah.
And I will say there was one point where Quarry says, as he goes out and is seeing what happened to all these people, that he felt like he was on the geriatric sex tour.
Bring it on, mate. I cannot wait for that. But the geriatric sexual intercourse carousel, I think that's as good a reason as any to pick this fine novel up, Quarry's Blood. You heard it here first.
That's absolutely right. And
was the original title Quarry's Blood Test?
It's in that there. You're closer than you think you are. But it's a. I think you can see, and this is one of the things that, as much as I like the Quarry TV show they did on Cinemax, I thought it was excellent, but they really didn't get the humor. And the dark humor in these books is, to me, the most important thing.
Yeah.
And Quarry's Blood is very dark, but very funny, I think. And that's true of a lot of my work, I think. I think it's characterized by dark humor.
Now, let's use, speaking about your work, to pivot into a character you have just mentioned in the course of talking about Quarry, and that is, of course, Nolan, who you brought back into print with Hard Case Crime with a new adventure published last November 2020, which is Skim Deep, and now Titan Books, in the form of Hard Case Crime, have just published this year two new Nolan collections of previously published material, but stuff that's not been available for a long time. And those are the collections Two for the Money and Double Down. So if for those not familiar, how can you orient them to the content of Two for the Money and Double Down, Max?
Well, each one is includes two books that were published separately, but that are intertwined, so they essentially become continuing novels, which is, again, this is the kind of the saga concept. What it really is about is shows my ability to be bribed. And Charles R. Dye is a unique individual. He is incredibly enthusiastic, but also has a capacity for saying the worst side of everything, as I've never seen. I mean, it's like most people say, it's a glass half full or glass half empty. He's like, "Where's my glass? Who took my glass?" Okay, that's Charles. Or someone's gonna take my glass. That's probably better, because he's so paranoid. Because if I have an idea for him, the first part of our conversation is always the 15 reasons why I shouldn't do it. And then we get past them, and then I do it anyway. And he sells it to the public, thank God. But he was a big Nolan fan. That's at the beginning of Hard Case Crime. I believe I was the only author, maybe Lawrence Block was in the mix, who wasn't dead, that he was going after, and he wanted a book of mine called Blood Money. Well, Blood Money is, and I said to him, well, Blood Money is the second book. You need to do the first book. I'll give you the bait money, the first book, if you publish them together as one book. And I don't want anything for it. Just give me what you're going to pay me to reprint Blood Money. I just think the readers ought to see the story in continuity. Ever since, he's been after me to do another Nolan book. And I finished the story in the mid 80s, and it was very much a period on the end of the sentence in my mind.
Yeah.
And he wanted another one. This always came up. And then finally I said, well, if you bring the other ones back out, I would consider doing, another, and doing a follow-up. And I did. And I did a very direct sequel to the book that as with the Quarry book, I did very direct sequel to what I had thought was the last book about Nolan. And it was great fun to revisit these characters. Nolan is this very hard-bitten thief who's in his early 50s, and his partner is a guy named John, much younger, at this point probably mid-20s, and John was a comic book fan, right? He's a comic book fan, a comic book collector, and an underground cartoonist. And he very much was my point of view character when I wrote the original books. Now that I'm old, I relate more to Nolan than I do to John, but it was a father surrogate son situation. And apparently that's a theme of mine, because we have the literal father and son in Road to Perdition.
Yeah, of course.
But I had a wonderful time with Skim Deep, and I think it's very funny. Again, a lot of humor, but it's scary too. I think it's one of the best of the books. And Andrew, I hadn't written about him since the mid 80s. So when you sit down to write a character that you have, and I created Nolan when I was in 19 years old or something, and so this is something from the beginning, literally the beginning of my career. Bait Money was my first published novel. And I'm like, will he be there? When I sit down to write about him, will he be there? He was there. He was there. John was there. It's like I hadn't missed a beat.
And Skim Deep has been received extremely well, and
has
earned a ton of great reviews, which must make you very happy. I know it makes all of us very happy, but you must feel very proud of the reception.
Well, I was really scared because the very first review was, and I know you're not supposed to talk about your bad reviews, but I do anyway. Publishers Weekly, which is a powerful voice in publishing, the guy hated it. He seemed to hate me personally. I don't know what I did to this guy, but it was a nasty review, and I thought, oh my God, maybe I shouldn't have done this book. Maybe I really made a mistake. I don't care how long you've been in the business and how confident you are, and I'm a pretty confident guy, but I still, you can still knock the feet out from under me. Then every other review since has been stellar. All the other trades, book lists, Kirkus doesn't like ice cream, okay? and they love this book, and so every library journal, I mean, they all loved it, and then the readers have been posting well, like it, on Amazon and at all of these websites have been stellar, and that feels really, really good. That feels really good.
Yeah, quite right too. And the other thing I should point out is this: whether it's the new novel Skim Deep, or whether it is Two for the Money and Double Down, which are out right now and can be ordered right now, or Tough Tender, which is coming in 2022, in March 2022, or Mad Money, which is coming later in 22 or in 23. This entire Nolan sequence for Hard Case Crime has these beautiful matching covers.
Oh, wonderful.
And what's the name of the artist again, Max?
I believe it's Mark Eastbrook, and yeah. I tell you, he did exactly what I wanted, because I have to tell you, one of the things that Hard Case Crime is known for are their phenomenal retro covers. Yeah. And the only really bad cover I know that they ever did was for Two for the Money originally.
Yeah.
It was actually well executed. It just didn't have anything to do. The characters were not depicted the way I had described them in the books.
Yeah.
I described him as looking like Lee Van Cleef.
Yeah. Exactly.
Nolan was looking as Lee Van Cleef, and I met Lee Van Cleef, as a matter of fact. So part of my wanting to have Charles bring the books back out was to get a new cover for Two for the Money, which I now have. But what I said was, I want a movie poster. I want like a 1970s, Charlie Varick or Dirty Harry or what. I want a movie poster. And so these all have a movie poster look. And then you get to play the movie in your brain.
Yeah. With a very Lee Van Cleef-esque Nolan, as you touched upon.
Yeah, he looks uncomfortably like Lee Van Cleef now.
They are absolutely beautiful covers. And anybody who's intrigued by what Max has just mentioned, which is having met Lee Van Cleef, we're not going to get into that here, but if you go to the Forbidden Planet TV channel on YouTube, Forbidden Planet TV, which is presented by yours truly, and have a look at the list of videos, there are a bunch of interviews between myself and Max where we actually go into some detail in that story, and it is totally worth checking out. So check out the interviews with myself and Max over at Forbidden Planet TV on YouTube. And now, of course, we're going to transition from Nolan to a great love of both yours and mine, Mickey Spillane's Mike Hammer, who in 2022 will be celebrating his 75th anniversary. And that's something we work together on, of course. And when I say we work together, Max is the writer of these books, and I do a little bit to assist him on those books. And we've got some great plans for next year, right, mate?
We really do. A lot's going to be happening. Most of it at Titan, but a few things elsewhere. Yeah. For example, I'll start elsewhere. We're doing a full biography of Mickey Spillane. I'm doing it with James Traylor, who's done a couple of books with me on Mickey. And we're doing, basically a literary biography that will be published by Otto Penzler at Mysterious Press.
Brilliant.
I'm hoping to do a remix, a re-edit of my documentary, Mickey Spillane's, Mike Hammer's Mickey Spillane, which you can see a version of it now on the Criterion Kiss Me Deadly Blu-ray and DVD. And that's something I did around 1999. So those are a couple of things that are going to happen. But the main thing is we're doing a very special volume where there's going to be a Mike Hammer story, a Mike Hammer novel, a full-length novel that is called Kill Me If You Can, which is based on an unproduced screenplay that Mickey wrote basically for television. And he wrote this in maybe 53 or 54. This is vintage stuff. So I'm going to be novelizing that. And then we have, as a bonus, we're calling it the Hammerverse, 5 stories that take place, short stories that take place in the Hammer universe, the Mike Hammer universe of New York. And 2 of the stories are very significant stories about Mike Hammer, really, really key stories in the canon. And then the other 3 are just really strong Spillane stories. And I should say what the short stories I've done co-bylined with Mickey have been in sort of 2 areas. One will be a fragment I found where he did 2, 3, 4 pages and stopped, and I just finish it. And in a few cases, there's one called The Big Run, for example. There was a half-hour TV script he wrote that was not produced, and so I turned that into a story. So, as you know, on Andrew, one of the I think the most unique thing about the enterprise I've been involved in since 2006 is not to write new Mike Hammer stuff and put, say Mickey Splain's Mike Hammer and here's a new Mike Hammer story. Every single thing I've done has been something from Mickey's files that was unpublished or unfinished, because my goal was to finish Mickey's work, not so much to continue it. Maybe someday I will, but right now he had an enormous amount of stuff in his files, a crazy amount of stuff in his files. Of the Mike Hammer books that have been done, that Titan has all of them. I think something like 8 of them, and we've done what, maybe 15?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay,
yeah.
8 of them were Mike Hammer, one of the most famous literary detectives of all time, best-selling of the 20th century. And Mickey had, 7 or 8 of these that were just a third finished.
Yeah.
I mean, really substantial manuscripts. Most of these things, Kiss Her Goodbye, for example, was which I think a paperback is coming out of that.
Yeah. So just to further that for a second. So in addition, we're in addition to what we've got planned on the 75th anniversary, we're about to talk about, there are 2 new Hammer paperbacks out this year. That Kiss Her Goodbye, published in April 2021, and Murder My Love, published in June 2021. And the story behind, not to interrupt your flow, Max, but the story behind Kiss Her Goodbye is very interesting.
Well, there's 2 things that make that kind of a special book. One is he had 2 very different takes on it, where the stories went in a completely different direction with the same beginning, essentially. So I had to take those 2 stories that he did and shuffle the deck to make them one story. Yeah. That was one of the most challenging writing experiences I've ever had. And then that was a good deal of material that I had. So it's genuine Mickey Spillane stuff. But also the ending, which he didn't exactly had not exactly written the ending, but I was extrapolating from his notes where he was headed. And it became clear to me, I knew exactly what was going on. And I wrote it that way. And the original, because the first 3 books I did for Otto Penzler, not at Titan. Titan has picked them up, and Titan has the new editions. Well, Otto felt that the ending was too much like another famous ending of a Mickey Spillane story. And he basically made me do a different ending. And so I did do an ending, and it was, I think, a pretty satisfactory ending, but I was not happy. I wanted to have my ending and Mickey's ending published as the real ending of that story. And I went to you, Andrew, and said, when this comes out in paperback from Titan, can we restore the previously censored ending? And there's a sexual aspect to it that was why it was censored.
Yeah.
And I mean, Otto is a big Spillane fan, and he's very knowledgeable. This is just one of the rare times he and I did not see eye to eye. but I respected him for bringing those books into print, and I went along with it. But it was something that always bothered me, and people are responding to this, to this restored ending now, quite favorably.
Yeah, right. I mean, when you suggested it, as you know, I was all for it. I was all for it. I thought it was the only way to go, really, and it felt really like we were honouring the spirit of Spillane, actually getting that done. It felt like a very, very Spillane moment as the editor of that title, to be able to say to you, "That's what we've got to do, mate. You're absolutely right." It felt good to me.
Well, and it felt good to me also, and it's an interesting book overall, because it's one of the books Mickey did a number of times, because Mickey put My Camera aside. Kiss Her Goodbye was one where he hadn't written about My Camera in about 10 or 15 years. And so he set this up as My Camera returning to New York after basically being in hiding from gangsters for a number of years. And so Hammer comes into the, an era that is not associated with My Camera. There is a Studio 54 kind of nightclub. There's this woman called Chrome who's basically a Madonna kind of figure. Yeah. And so you have all of this stuff. So you get to take him as a man out of time. And neither one of them are our current times, which is interesting too. And it has probably the most violent shootout scene in all of Spillane. And because I went into it with one goal, I'm going to make this bloodier than One Lonely Night.
Yeah, and which is a tall order. It's not the easiest thing to do.
No, because One Lonely Night famously, when his editor, talk about editors, the editor said to him, you can't, you can't have My Camera come in with a machine gun and shoot and kill 200 people. And he said, so I rewrote it and made it 75.
Amen to that. Amen to that. I'm a big believer, as you know, and a big supporter of Hammer at his psychotic best. And
yeah, I agree. Yeah, he's messed up. He's very messed up.
Right on. I want the post-GI PTSD Hammer killing people left, right, and center. Beating the shit out of people with his bare hands. That's the man I love to read about.
Well, the current one, which is still out right now in hardcover, Masquerade for Murder, and we just had a nomination for that. We just had a
right on. Actually, I'm very proud. I'm very proud of that, mate. I'm very proud of you. Can we just talk about we'll get back on track with things in a sec. Can we just talk about your nominations? Because this is hot off the press, right? As we are talking to you, we found this out yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah. Not only has Masquerade for Murder been nominated for Best Novel by the International Association of Media and Tie-in Writers, but they named me a Grand Master.
Well, congratulations, mate. I can't think of anybody who deserves that title more highly than you. Well done, brother. That's brilliant.
Well, it's called the Faust.
Yeah.
And I actually, the embarrassing thing is I named that award because I co-founded with Lee Goldberg in 2006 this organization, which made me think I'd never be chosen as a Grand Master, despite the fact that I have done an awful lot of media and tie-in work, novelization, and so on. But Faust is named for a guy named Frederick Faust. Frederick Faust was Max Brand, who created Dr. Kildare, but wrote many, many Westerns. And for Dr. Kildare, he wrote some of his own novelizations of the movies they were making.
Yeah.
And so I thought that the Faustian notion for what media writers have to do, which is that you are doing you get to write about Star Trek, but you pay with your soul, right?
Yeah, right on, of course.
So that Faustian bargain meant that any of us who have worked in that area, the ultimate award would be the Faust.
Yeah.
And and this is my third Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah, right on.
PWA, the I, and then the Edgar for Grandmaster Mystery Writers of America, which is your peers' way of saying, you're really great, but you've been around long enough. Would you move along? Would you just please move along?
It's brilliantly well deserved, mate. And to flip back into Murder My Love, which, as you're watching this panel, has just been published, and alongside Kiss Goodbye is available in paperback now. Real quick, what can you tell us about Murder My Love?
Well, Murder My Love is again had a really good splaying setup. I think he was probably inspired by his personal contempt, one I don't share, for Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
And so it's a fairly overtly political novel for Hammer, but it's again we talked earlier in this interview about the fact that I like to make a saga out of it. And one of the things I've done with Hammer is I try to figure out, sometimes I know because there's annotations, but I try to figure out when Mickey has worked on the unfinished material that I'm dealing with so that I can insert it into a timeline for Mike Hammer. And then I can put him into the New York of, say, the 80s or the 90s and have the fun of bouncing him up against the attitudes and the mores and of the day and the popular culture of the day. And this is kind of a Clinton era political book, even though there's nothing about Clinton in it. And then Masquerade for Murder, the hardcover that's out right now.
Wow. We
talked about this. It's as straight a Hammer PI novel as you can imagine. He actually has a client, which is fairly rare in Mike Hammer, because he's basically a vigilante, right?
I was very proud of that, actually, when you wrote it, and I was the editor on that book.
Yes, you were.
Something I was always tremendously proud of is putting together a Hammer novel where he actually has a client. I thought that was fantastic.
He does. He has a client, but at the same time, because I know some people reacted to this like, well, this is the more mellow Mike Hammer and so on. But toward the end of the book, there's a scene just as psychotic as anything in any Mike Hammer book. But you have to build that up so it's not coming out of left field, because you never know in a series which book in a series is going to be the first book read by somebody. So one of the trickiest things about a long running series is to make it welcoming, even if it's book 15.
Right on. I couldn't agree more. And you're so good at that, mate. And Masquerade for Murder has this incredibly propulsive climax, which is what you're alluding to. And I remember when the manuscript came in and I was reading it, if you recall, the first thing I said is like, I fucking love the ending of this book, mate. This final third, that's amazing. I loved all of it, but where it gets to and the Hammer behavior that's, even in a later age, the fact that he's pulling his inner youthful psychotic Hammer out, I think is great.
Yeah, I mean, he's always going to be Mike Hammer. It's like there's a kind of a parallel when I've dealt with Mickey's work, and I've dealt with Chester Gould, for example, on Dick Tracy. These guys at the end of their careers were not at their peak, let's say, creatively. So you can be reading, like I did for IDW introductions to all the Chester Gould, Dick Tracy. And you can be reading Chester Gould and thinking, wow, he's really lost it. And then suddenly he'll bring a punch up from the floor and just knock. I mean, he's still a genius.
Yeah.
And he still can't floor you. And Mickey is the same way, where I'll be looking at this stuff and I'm thinking, well, I have to kind of fix this. I got to protect Mickey because and then I turn the page and he just puts one between my eyes.
Yeah.
He was Mickey Spillane to his last day. Never count these guys out. Somebody like a Will Eisner, he's always going to be Will Eisner as long as he's on the planet and after.
Well said, brother. I wholeheartedly agree. And so Hammer 75 is going to be next year, 2022.
Yes.
And we've got Kill Me If You Can, the 75th anniversary novel, coming out in August 22, along with the 5 Hammerverse short stories. We've got the Hammer biography, the Spillane biography coming out from Otto Penzler. And right now we've got Kiss Her Goodbye and Murder My Love, both of which have been published in paperback in 2022. Masquerade for Murder is still out this year in hardback.
It will be out in the 75th anniversary year in trade paperback,
right
I
on.
think.
Yeah, I think that's, and that's the other thing to bear in mind about both Kiss Her Goodbye and Murder My Love. They're out in beautiful trade paperback editions.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah, they really are. And also, inside track, Murder My Love features Max's finest ever book dedication. My personal favorite out of every single book dedication he's ever written. So check it out. It's well worth reading.
That was a little self-serving, Andrew. But it's been my experience that if you don't serve yourself, who's going to do it?
Who's going to do it? You know, and I want to put that cue in for my mum when she watches this.
That's great.
So and pivoting away from Hammer and the world of Titan Books and Titan Comics and Hard Case Crime for a second, just before we wrap up, I know we've got a couple of other projects you'd like to mention. What can you tell us about Neotext, Max?
Neotext is a very interesting group that are trying to develop properties that will be good for TV and movies, but through contacting creators like me to write novels and novellas and short stories, which they are putting out as ebooks and also as print-on-demand books. And there's a heavy illustrative aspect of this, which means that there'll probably be really nice, more formal editions from publishers like Titan, I hope. For example, I'm doing a thing called Fancy Anders, which is about a young female private eye during World War II in Hollywood, and we have an illustrator for that doing the covers and doing spot illustrations. You know, like one illustration per chapter is a woman named Faye Dalton from the UK, who was the illustrator of the covers of several of the Mike Hammer and Quarry comic books I did for Titan. So there's a Titan tie-in there as well. And then, of course, with, you know this, Dave Thomas from SCTV of the famous Mackenzie brothers, who you may not know this, was a writer on and producer on Blacklist and Bones. We have done a kind of a crossover noir contemporary science fiction book for Neotext. It's going to appear in 3 parts, and it is called The Many Lives of Jimmy Layton, and it is vaguely a multiverse kind of story. That doesn't explain it, but it's a guy who has to live many lives. It's, if you had taken a left, what would your life be? Brilliant. If you and Dave Thomas is a phenomenal storyteller and a great writer.
Wonderful. I can't wait to check it out. And what's going on with your antique series?
The antique series is the cozy mystery series I do with my wife Barb. It's been around a long time. We've done 15. I think the 16th is in process right now. We just changed publishers. I should just move to London because our publisher is a publisher called Severin House.
Nice.
And the first book, because we moved to a British publisher, the first book, which is out right now, is called Antiques Carry On.
I love it.
And every chapter is named after a Carry On movie.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's great, mate. I mean, that's a deep UK cut. And sticking with the UK to a degree, what can you tell me about John Sand?
Well, John Sand is a character that Matthew Clemens and I have developed for Wolfpack, which is another interesting publisher. And John Sand is the guy in my world who James Bond was based on. That's the conceit of it, that John Sand is actually a secret agent who is outed because he became famous because his former colleague wrote these books that are now being big movies, and so he can't really be a secret agent anymore. On one level, it's as if the end of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, let's say, had ended more positively because he's happily married to a very wealthy woman. And so that's pretty exciting that we just delivered our third one of those, which is called To Live and Spy in Berlin. I'm also doing a couple things that will tie into the 75th of Mike Hammer. Mickey's kids' books are going to be collected by Wolfpack in one volume. Brilliant. And I'm novelizing a non-Mike Hammer screenplay into a novel for them. And all of these things will probably have, as was the case when we did the 100th anniversary of Mickey Splain's birth, a medallion on the cover that will identify it as this is the 75th anniversary of Mike Hammer year.
Yeah.
And so we haven't developed that yet, but we will be soon. And Titan very generously, when we did that for the 100th, also gave that to the other publishers so that anybody else publishing Spillane material got that medallion to put on there and say, you know, we all celebrate what Mickey Spillane accomplished. And as you know, he was denigrated a lot over the years. And one of my jobs has been to rehabilitate the reputation of this incredibly important figure in hard-boiled noir fiction, one who is on a par with Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler. And that will probably start some fights, but you know where to find me.
Not with you. Not, I know it won't be with me. Yeah, because I'll be in your corner, mate. You'll be starting a fight with both of us. You know, and I'd like to see anybody get the better of both of us at the same time in this fight. That's what you know. And I'm there to back you up, mate. That's the way I'll put it.
Don't back me up. Slip behind them when they're arguing with them. Get them from behind.
That's pure Hammer.
The knife comes.
Yeah. So on that fantastic Hammer 75th is coming next year note.
Very excited.
This has been the Max Allan Collins San Diego Comic Con 2021 panel, and we have been talking about Mystery and The Cold Dish, the third in the Mystery archives from Titan Comics, comes out in September 2021 and is available for pre-order now. The latest Quarry novel from Hardcase Crime, Quarry's Blood, comes out in November 2021 and is available for pre-order now. A whole range of Nolan books from Hardcase Crime, Skim Deep, Two for the Money, and Double Down are all available for purchase now. And we have Tough Tender coming in March 22, and then Mad Money at some point beyond. And then on the Hammer front, in the Mickey Splain's Mike Hammer front, Kiss a Goodbye has just published from Titan Books. Murder My Love has just published from Titan Books, both in softcover, both in trade paperback. And we also have Masquerade for Murder out now in hardback from Titan Books, all available. And that list alone should tell you what you need to know about Max Allan Collins. Not only is he the best, not only is he the three biggest names in noir fiction, he's also incredibly fucking prolific, you know, and that's unlike no one else on the face of the earth. So what you've got is highly prolific and a massively high level of critically appraised quality. That's what you get when you get Max Allan Collins. And you also get fantastic conversation. So thanks for joining us, mate. It's been another great one.
Can we meet in San Diego itself next time?
Mate, I really, really hope so. I can't wait to come back, that's for sure. We need to get out on for part two.
Part two is in San Diego next year.
Part two is in San Diego. And when we're done, we'll go out on the bay and have a good time, mate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Looking forward to it, brother. You take care of yourself, Max.
Andrew, you're the best. Thank you so much.
You, in fact, are the best. Take care, brother. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.